So what I want to talk to you all today about is Sitecore Helix. Let's see, let me get this to work. Sitecore Helix is is a design pattern that Sitecore is starting to put out. I've been working with Sitecore Helix for about a year now. It's fairly new. It's really a set of guidelines of principles that Sitecore is going to start instilling in any module or solution they're going to build. Okay, it's an adoption. I think it's catching on pretty quickly. There's a lot of what's the word I want to say, contention, I would say, in the community in terms of using Helix because it challenges the way developers think about Sitecore. So the idea of Helix is supposed to give developers a starting point, really something to get their solution started. Over the years, Sitecore has had a lot of implementations, some good, some bad. I've seen a fair share of Sitecore implementations that have not been developed so well. And that's because the Sitecore product is really open. Really, as a developer, I can do a lot of things with it. I can make it look pretty for the marketing group of the business, or I can destroy it and make people hate the product. So it's really, really flexible. And like one movie I always say, with great, what's the quote? Oh no, with great, yes, there we go. There we go. With great power comes great responsibility. Same with Sitecore. It's so powerful that you have to be responsible and you have to take care of it. And as a result, I believe Sitecore has identified an issue in terms of the development community when they put that product in the market, in the Northwest about 12 years now, that many developers started building things and it didn't always work. Things broke down. It was not maintainable. It didn't scale. And as a result, I think it gave Sitecore a bad name in some companies. And some companies that had partners that were experienced in the product, they did very well. Okay, so Sitecore, I believe, wants to kind of standardize how developers are looking at their solutions. How are they building Sitecore? Is it going to scale? Is it going to work? If I develop something and I hand it to you, will you be able to recognize my pattern and pick it up and start working with it immediately? Those have been some of the challenges picking up development work in general, in the development community in general, but specifically Sitecore, I think they're trying to close that gap. So, Habitat is what is Habitat? How many have heard of Habitat, by the way? Okay, great. How many have heard of Helix? Okay, great. So how do they connect to each other? So Habitat is a Sitecore development project in Visual Studio built with Helix concepts. They did that to give the developers an idea of how does this look in a real life solution. Okay, and I'm gonna use the Habitat solution as part of my demonstration here as I go through some of this stuff. I'm going to try to be very high level. I may get specific. But I'm going to try to keep it fast because it's more conceptual. This is kind of a conceptual discussion. I could probably speak about Helix probably for 3 days straight, and I wouldn't go through everything that's a part of it. Okay. So one con is that it's a lot of information to know. Okay. And Sitecore has a website called I don't know what it's called, but you can type in Sitecore Helix. I have the link at the end of the presentation, and it has an entire website of just concepts and how to do Helix. I don't know, 30, 60 pages of documentation for a developer to go through, okay? So there's a lot to it. I'm gonna try to keep on some of the key principles, or actually key principle, and then we'll see how it works. My mouse is not working here. There we go, it's a little slow. Oh, that's the wrong way. I'm a little bit better with with Sitecore than I am with PowerPoint. So one thing about Helix, if you go to GitHub, you can download the Habitat solution from GitHub directly. They also have a site out there. You can actually just browse to it that you can see the actual Sitecore end user experience on Helix if you're curious about it. And these links will be at the end of the slide, and it will be shared with you guys at the end as well. And I'll demo it a little bit. All right, some terminology. I've done about 2 big projects with Helix since I started using it. I think sometime last year. One for a very large product, and another one for a very large home builder. Okay. And one of the challenges with Helix is just understanding the terminology. It has its own nomenclature. Okay. It has module, solution, project, serialization. These are some concepts that a developer is going to have to understand if they intend to uphold the guidelines of Helix. Okay. A module is really, let me see if I can try to make this not as technical as possible. A module is really just, think about it as a feature that achieves a certain business goal. For instance, a blog. Okay, something that you can componentize when you develop. Instead of building the website, instead of building all the website together, build components. It's about component development. That's the idea of Helix. How can I develop my Sitecore solution in components, into modules? That way I can share content with future projects, or I can share functionality between customers if you're a consultant. If you're working on the project and the business wants you to copy and paste this solution and make it work for this business, you know, and they say you've already built it, right? So you should be able to just pick it up, put it down, and it should work. How many have heard that from a developer perspective? I have. Does that always work? No. But with this particular architecture, it gets you there a little bit. I actually had to do it recently. I built a Helix solution out in October. This exact customer had the exact same requirement. I was able to simply copy and paste, change out the names, and voila, I was done. I didn't have to do anything. So that's the beauty of it. So modular architecture is where this is going, so that we can reuse and distribute development work between multiple developers and multiple projects. With the architecture of Helix, there's about 3 layers that it focuses on, and I'll get to that in the next slide. But each layer depends on one another. So this I would consider the foundation layer, the feature layer, and the project layer. This layer depends on this layer depends on these 2 layers, okay? And one architectural principle about Helix is that, assume this is the feature layer, these modules should not depend on one another, okay? So when I code something, this module shouldn't depend on this module. If it does, it should go here. This module can depend on these, but it shouldn't depend on this module. So for instance, if you're building a blog and you're building a CRM integration, those will be two different modules. Both code bases shouldn't depend on each other, and that's the idea of Helix. And that can cause a little bit of trouble, because traditionally when we develop something, we may have one web project, right? And we may have all of these other business logic layers in our .NET solution that we reuse from time to time. But eventually the web project is referencing all these other projects in order to build out the solution. And so that's called tight coupling in terms of the Helix design. And they're trying to decouple code from one another so that you can truly use it and reuse it in multiple places. Okay? The idea is to reduce dependencies. So the project layer, as I mentioned, is typically your website. Okay? The feature layer can be blogs or events or CRM integration, and then foundation are usually helper tasks and extensions that you use in your codes or utility classes that you may use from throughout all projects, such as get item or get this field, and you may standardize the way of doing that. Okay? So the idea is to reduce dependencies. The idea is not to have my code dependent upon your code, or have your code dependent upon my code, so that I can develop something without needing your assembly, so I can make a change to a production environment without breaking something else, make a change to something else and over here breaks, So Helix is designed to prevent that. So enough talk. Let me get a little bit into Visual Studio here. So bear with me. Does everybody see my screen? Okay. Who is this familiar to? All right, good. What is this software called? No one knows. They said it's familiar to them. Visual Studio. So this is Visual Studio. This is the, you said what?
13 or 15?
Oh, that's messed up, man. It's not 13. Okay, no, it's 2015. So Visual Studio, this is the habitat solution. So one thing I want to show developers is how the solution is organized. So if you look at it, I have 3 folders, or 4 folders really: project, foundation, and feature. And I'm going to expand them a little bit here. It's a lot of folders. I can expand features. These are all the features: accounts, demos, FAQs, languages. So Sitecore is developing their solutions that way. When they come out with a new module, they're going to build it based on this architecture. Okay, so it's important as a consultant to know it. At the end, I will tell you my feelings about it, having done it. I'm kind of keeping that to the end a little bit because there are some things I agree with, some things that I disagree with. I would say that if you have a practice of doing Sitecore very well, this may challenge that. So it's something to be aware of. And you have to try to figure out how do you mend your practices with this practice, if you're going to do it, and how much time is it going to take you to adopt it and learn it, okay? And it may not be beneficial for your organization, and it may be, depending on who you are. If you're a single developer, I would tell you to stay away from this because it can be overkill. But if you're working with multiple developers and multiple business units and you need to support them without one code affecting this may be an effective model for you. One key thing that I will mention to a developer is that each of these folders here, these projects, these are all .NET projects. Has anybody seen this before? Okay. When I first saw this, I was, what's the word I want to say? I don't know what word to use. Perplexed, flabbergasted. How could they do this? This is going to kill my Visual Studio. What, we don't, fabric, we don't use that? Can I get a new term that's in the new dictionary? Each one of these projects will be a separate .NET assembly. So you can, as a developer, you can see that this may take quite a bit of management, okay? So this is one of the drawbacks, personally. But if I open up, sorry, my mouse is not moving here. Open up one here. Is there a mouse pad over here? Okay, here we go. Open up this. In this solution, it contains, so if we have a blog or if we have a component, all of the assets of building a blog will be in that project. The front-end HTML, the views, the repositories, your dependency injections, anything that you use to build a website will typically be in this feature. As opposed to an inter model where you may have a data layer, a business logic layer, and a presentation layer. And traditionally, typically, you would separate those out into different .NET projects and then share them between your projects. This is saying, let me just build one project or multiple projects with only the code that I need. No other code knows about my code, and I don't know about anybody else's code, okay? So it's great that I can just take this project, cut it, put it somewhere else, compile the assembly, throw the files on the file system, and it should work. And that's the idea. But what happens when you have 255 projects? What do you do? How do you deploy that? How do you know if something changes? So this is where it gets a little bit complex. And so at the beginning of this slide, this was called an introduction to Helix. So I want to have many more conversations about this, of how to use it, because it can be a lot to learn. So let me step out of Visual Studio and let me go into Sitecore. So I'm just kind of giving you guys a little teaser of what's there. So if my Visual Studio is set up that way, then how is Sitecore set up? What does that look like? How are my templates organized? What do my renderings look like? You know, how is a tree structure affected by this so-called decoupling of functionality of a single solution? So let me just show you how that works. For those of you who know where I'm going, so Sitecore has put a folder for a feature, foundation, and project. And typically, when we built Sitecore solutions, we would put everything under user-defined so that we can have them, you know, those are the things that we've built. But they stopped recommending that with this particular practice. So the project is typically your website. So for instance, the website that your end users are going to build. So Habitat is a site that's a part of the solution. These are the templates that it uses. And as you can see, there's not a lot here. There's just pages and a site root. Well, where's all the other functionality that we saw? Well, those are organized in the features and foundation folders. Okay? And if you look closely, let me click on the home page template here. And I'm going to click on content and show the inheritance. The project templates are usually there just to inherit from the templates of the feature and foundation projects. That's how the structure is set up. This way, if you have a Sitecore solution that is a multi-tenant solution or a multi-site solution, you can inherit, more than one site can use the same functionality across entire Sitecore platform. So if you have a Sitecore solution that has 20 sites by 20 different business units, and this business unit wants the blog, and they want the exact same blog, but you want to have a little bit of customization for this particular business unit versus another, you can do this with this particular model. It allows you to do that. It allows you to create that customization without copying, pasting the code from one project to another. Okay, so it can be really effective that way. So just to give you guys a little idea of how this is actually organized, layouts is organized the exact same way. Features and foundation and then project, okay? And so I would encourage you, if you're interested in this, to take a look, read the documentation, go through it, because there's a lot there, okay? All right, any questions? All right, did I scare anybody yet? Yep, go ahead.
To use something like dependency injection in this model, does that mean that each individual component or individual model or module has to maintain its own dependency injection?
Not necessarily. So what you would do in that scenario, depending on how, if you're using a DI container or something like that, you can put that as a foundation project. And only the features that want to use that container can use it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Kind of, but didn't you just create a dependency upon the?
Well, that is correct. So the layers can depend on one another. The idea is not to, I don't have that slide up, let me put that slide up. The idea is not to have dependencies between layers, not to have dependency between layers, but you can go down, okay? And that's the idea. So for instance, in one of my solutions, I have a blog project, it probably references all of the foundation projects, okay, because it uses it. But I don't reference any of these over here, okay? So if I needed something, I would create a dependency injection foundation project and then have these projects that use that, reference that, and then that is the dependency that's there. Because you can't eliminate dependencies, you're gonna have some of them, but the idea is to minimize them as much as possible, okay? Cool, great question. Technologies to know. Depending on your development background, I'm a Microsoft guy. I got a Microsoft phone in my pocket with my Microsoft Surface. I'm a Microsoft computer at home, so I'm a Microsoft guy. Brett's a Mac guy, and we don't get along sometimes when it comes to technologies.
Yeah, see, but I didn't brag about it.
Still, it's okay. I got to push it out a little bit. I'm in the Microsoft room, right? Okay, so
We just let the product.
so
But hey, your slides look great.
no, they don't. Yeah, they're using Microsoft standards, right? No, they don't look great at all. we need to do something different. So I'm a developer. I'm not supposed to look pretty right now. So technologies. There are a lot of technologies to adopt when using this solution. So I come from Microsoft, TFS. You know, it's all there. I don't have to go anywhere else, and I can deploy it and auto deploy. This solution is going to challenge that. It's going to make it harder. It's going to make it difficult. Specifically with Habitat, if you're using the Helix model, with Habitat specifically, if you use that as a base, you're going to have to know Git. You're going to have to use NPM and Gulp. Remember, we have 250 assemblies. Well, how do I get all those assemblies into my web project? If I was doing a traditional model, I have to go through each assembly and publish each one of them just to make the updates on my website. So you're going to need some scripting going on. PowerShell, you're going to need to have all of that. You're going to need at least Visual Studio 2005 because Task Run is going to become your friend. I'm sorry, 15. Sorry, did I say 2005? So I'm a little old in the V as well. You're going to have to understand NuGet. Unicorn is a big component. One reason why I loved this, well, I don't necessarily love, but I've really liked Helix is because of how it uses Unicorn. Unicorn is a way to distribute Sitecore assets, templates, and renderings into Sitecore, into your development environment, into a Sitecore instance. And it's really fabulous. So when I talk about picking up a blog, I'm not talking about just the code. I'm talking about anything that Sitecore needs in order for that solution to run inside of a Sitecore solution. Okay. Pros and cons. I feel that the Helix architecture is strong when it comes to modular architecture. Being able to distribute work between multiple developers has been golden. I can assign one developer work, and he can work in his project, and another developer can work in their project, and they can never complain that his stuff broke my stuff because they're separated at that point. We've removed that dependency. Reusability. You gain a lot of experience in the true essence of separation of concerns is really there from my opinion. There are some cons, so that word is spelled wrong. Organization is going to be key. If you cannot do this if you are not organized, if you are not a disciplined developer, this will become frustrating for you. I've had many challenges where I'm trying to figure out where do I put an account manager? Is it foundation? Is it feature? Who will use it? Who will use it in the future? Those are the decisions that you have to make up front. So it kind of ties you to that. The build process is a little painful, I got to admit. When you're trying to build, 80 projects at a time, it can take a good 10 minutes. It can take 15 minutes. And then it hurts when it fails, and you got to start all over, okay? So they have to, the process has to do some work a little bit. I downloaded the solution this morning just to do it again from scratch. And it took longer than it needed to just to get some of the things to work. Okay, so it's still fairly new. I encourage you to look at it because it can be pretty powerful. Too many .NET projects. The learning curve is a little steep, and I think it may change and change your development process. So that is one thing to really keep in mind when working with this solution. Sitecore is they're pushing it hard. I think in about the next 2 years, the way that most companies will probably be using Helix as an architecture. I don't necessarily know if it's something that you need to change, just something to be aware of if you get a solution that's using this. If you open something like this up and you've never seen it before, it may overwhelm you as a developer as what to do, where do I change it so that I don't break something, and how do I maintain it, okay? Well, that's all that I got. Any more questions? Is anybody scared or excited? Neither really? Okay, good. Good. All right, cool. All right. Well, I'm done. Good question. Does it have to be MVC? No, it doesn't have to. It's independent of how you actually code. I think it's more about how you organize. So if you want to use web forms MVC, you can do that. So I've done both of them. So obviously people are trying to get away from web forms, and I had a solution today that when I go home, I'm working on that. I wish it was a web form project instead of an MVC in this particular instance. But yeah, you can do web forms or MVC. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you all.